This is the Endeavor Clout, and under the pretty lights on the table. Just taking a look at this, showing you what it's all about, camber profile wise, setback on board wise. You can see it's got a nice bow of camber. You can see how the board of directors had more, but every board bends differently when it's made. Wood is just so unpredictable and so different. Each core is different, and you know, cures differently. Some cure higher, some cure lower. So you know, you can kind of see the difference, but the general theme with all these boards is there's a good amount of camber, and I can still, you know, get my hands under there. It's camber from tip to tail with this cool kind of like, I don't know if you can see under the pretty lights here, but it kind of goes like this. A little more abrupt and down this way, and then a long taper that kind of ends almost right at or a little before where the channel system begins. And you can see with this board, the nose is slightly different from the tail, but it felt like a true twin on side cut, so maybe that's why they call it a true twin, because it really did feel great either way. This, you know, little narrower than the Pioneer and the Ranger, and that full camber doesn't really make for the best float wise, but we'll get into that in a second. I'm just doing this. Everybody asked me recently, a lot of people asked me to do this, going back to the furthest out, the last marking on the channel system where they suggest you mount your bindings to show you the width here. And you're looking at the back here, you're looking at just about 26.3, 26.4, and all the way up in the front here, you're looking at about 25.4, 25.5, somewhere around like that. And it's the same up there. And then you've got a 22-inch reference stance. And if you want to set it all the way back, if you're getting this as kind of your like camber dominant all mountain board, but you want that forgiving camber feel, you want camber from tip to tail, but you don't want the edges to catch, this Clout does a really good job at that. And it's got a longer nose and tail, as you can see. It's got a little bit going on here to try to compensate for all that camber. But in comparison to like the Pioneer and the Ranger, they floated better because they just had all that early rise, even though they were going into what seems like to me a shorter nose and tail. But if you want to set this board all the way back and get some directional float, I did that with the Clout and went out in some powder on the same day as the Ranger and Pioneer. That's why I can like, yeah, those were easier. If you want to set it all the way back to these little arrows, we suggest not getting EST bindings because they set out much wider. You want the ones that go inside the disc like Reflex or basically any other binding out there in the industry that mounts Burton channel stuff in the disc. And you can easily get to these with most bindings. The last arrow, if you can, you're looking at a 5-inch difference between nose and tail and 2.5 inches back on board. And then if you're going to just the triple arrow, if that's, you know, maybe Endeavor says to me, no, just go to here for whatever reason. But, you know, it's all personal preference. If you want to get as far back and surfy as you can, I say go for it, but I don't know for sure. But if you can only get to the triple arrow, it's 4 inches difference between nose and tail and 2 back on board, which is still incredibly good. And it really helps compensate for this camber board. But yeah, I mean, having that early rise and, you know, the same setback on board, with the Pioneer and the Ranger, they floated way better, but this floats pretty good. And you can see, you can get some pretty decent directional float on board for a camber board. I would have been stoked on this years ago when everything was camber. To have that much setback on board for what seems like you know, mostly twin or almost true twin, just a touch directional twin. And you can see it's got a nice fast bass with a little, you know, peekaboo into the core there with the Endeavor logo there. It's just, you know, just really cool, really fast, easy to repair bass. So all in all, the Clout, very fun board, a little more, you know, kind of like just a, you know, a slightly tuned up board with a little more, you know, with some carbon in it, carbon fiber strips in it, just to give it a little more get up and go than the board of directors. But there you have it. That's the Clout under the pretty lights.